Mike Vigil is the pride of Espanola, New Mexico. Went off to study at New Mexico State, studied law enforcement, went to work for the Drug Enforcement Agency for a long, long time. Fought in South America, Central America, Mexico, and ended up as the agent in charge of international operations with the DEA. And now he lives in an undisclosed bunker near a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere. As long as he can get his donuts, he's happy. Miguelito, how you been?
Good. How you doing, Richard? I do have. I mean, I am in a bunker, which is the basement of a Dunkin' Donuts. So when they close up the shop, I just crawl out of the hole and, eat all the leftovers.
But they got good coffee. Dunkin' Donuts got good coffee.
Yeah, they've got a lot of good things there.
All right, Michael. One of the obviously one of the top stories that you deal with, drug smuggling and all that, and cartels and all that, and Metro, and all the stories that we talk about. But this story about Cuba and the embargo of Cuba, we've had an embargo, I don't know, since the 60s probably. But Trump has taken it to another level, and he's not allowing diesel and oil to get in to power their power plants, so they don't have electricity. They are desperate, and to even crank it up to an 11. Now they have DOJ's indicted Raul Castro, who's 92 or 95, something like that.
Yeah, he's you got it right, Richard. He's 94 years old. He's probably, if he lives another year, that's going to be a long time.
Yeah.
But to talk about Cuba, it's gotten into a situation with the Trump administration that they now believe that the United States is the police department of the world. And, in the middle of the conflict with Iran, Donald Trump was already making threats against Cuba, that Cuba was going to be next. And now what they're doing is they have the USS Nimitz, which is a huge, carrier. And then, it's a strike group is a company that, they're rebuilding, reconstructing, repaving the airfields there at Roosevelt Roads, which is a naval base in Puerto Rico. So they're already starting to mass a lot of military might, if you will, along the Caribbean, very much like they did with Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela. But the Trump administration has selected Cuba to an aggressive, what they call maximum pressure campaign to force regime change. And, now they're pushing the island into really an unprecedented humanitarian and energy crises. Under a strict U.S. fuel blockade initiated in January of this year, the Trump administration has essentially cut off all crude oil deliveries to Cuba, to include some that were going to come from Mexico and other countries. The U.S. has targeted international shipping companies and threatened, again, like he always does with the tariffs, or aranceles, as they call them in Spanish, on third-party nations like Mexico that supply oil to the island. Now, recently, a few days ago, the Cuban energy minister, Richard, confirmed that the country has completely run out of diesel and oil. This has triggered devastating, rolling blackouts, lasting up to 24 hours a day, crippling basic infrastructure. And here's the thing, Richard, and you and I have talked about this. I've always opposed, these sanctions because they don't hurt the regime that you're trying to hurt. You're hurting people that have nothing to do with the politics. They're just trying to live their lives, and those are the ones that suffer. The regimes control the central banks, they control the wealth.
Military.
So who are you hurting? You're hurting innocent people, starving women and children. But these blockades have driven, black market gasoline prices past $40 a gallon, Richard. Here we're paying about $5 in many parts of the country. But these guys are paying $40 a gallon, and most of them don't have the money to pay for those type of prices, resulting in severe food shortages, failing health care, and lack of running water. Now, as you mentioned, the Department of Justice officially charged 94-year-old Raul Castro, and the indictment stems from his alleged role when he was defense minister during the 1996 shoot down of two civilian planes operated by the Miami exile group Brothers to the Rescue. And I know you've heard of them. These are the guys that patrol the waters between Cuba and southern Florida to try to rescue people fleeing Cuba on rafts to try to save them, to make sure that they don't drown. But right now, the U.S. military, under the orders of Trump and the Pistol Pete Hegseth, is conducting intelligence gathering flights off the Cuban coast. And it appears that Cuba has been acquiring equipment, from Iran, and then also from Trump's good friend, Vladimir Putin, to the tune of about 300 military drones. Now, I have to say that knowing Cuba and knowing that region, it's unlikely that the pressure campaign will force a regime change. And unlike Venezuela, where you had a fractured political elite, which allowed for U.S. intervention, Cuba's political and military hierarchy is highly centralized and fiercely loyal to the Communist Party. There is, no clear internal successor or moderate faction within the Cuban government willing to collaborate with Washington, even more so now with the oil embargo. And then I think Trump wants to target Gaesa, which is a massive military-run conglomerate controlling up to 70% of Cuba's economy. And they think that this will force the military to, this actually is going to force the military to entrench further and take a more prominent role in ruling the island rather than fracturing. And again, sanctions rarely work. And, when you have people in Cuba, Richard, that spend 22 hours of the day searching for food, clean water, and power, they lack the resources, time, and even more so, the energy required to organize sustained political resistance. So the big result here is that, it's not, there's not going to be an uprising, but mass migration going into Central America, Mexico, and then also to the United States.
Could be. Raul has no official position. He's not governing, right?
No, he relinquished power.
I mean, he's retired. He's hanging out.
Yeah, he's in really bad shape, Richard. Like I said, if you last another year, it's gonna be a lot of time. So his successor, which Raul Castro named, is an individual by the name of Miguel Diaz Canet. He's currently the leader of Cuba, and but Raul Castro still carries a lot of heavy political weight in Cuba. And what Donald Trump is doing is really, uh, trying to, again, distract the American public from the Epstein files, from the you know horrible economy that we currently have under Trump, and he thinks that he is going to basically go into Cuba, very much like he did with Venezuela. And yes, the United States has the military power to take over in 3 or 4 days. But the fact of the matter is that it's going to go into guerrilla warfare, very much like Fidel Castro and Raúl Castro did when they overthrew Fulgencio Batista, the dictator at that time. And when you take a look at the geography of Cuba, you have the Sierra Maestra Mountains that lend themselves for guerrilla warfare, very much like, Castro and Che Guevara, and then, they would hide out in the mountains, come down and make their attacks. So it's gonna develop into a guerrilla warfare if they go in. But like I said, it's very easy to go in, but then the fact of the matter is that you are going to have to spend billions of dollars, reconstructing Cuba, providing everything that.
But if you take over the oil, you take over the land, and then you can build Trump Resort times 10 and some new casinos.
Yeah,
we'll take a break. We'll take a break, and we'll come back with Michael Vigil, the pride of Espanol in New Mexico. It's 20 minutes after 3.
Voice of Santa Fe on KTRC, Santa Fe's news talk leader.
24 minutes after 3 o'clock. Our guest is Mike Vigil, Mike S. Vigil. He retired from the DEA a few years ago. Now he's a writer and author of fiction. And I forget how many books now. How many novels? 9? 8? 9?
Well, the first one, Deal, was actually my autobiography.
Yes, not nonfiction.
And then I have 8 others, 9. And then I'm about 2/3 done with my 10th one.
Okay. He worked in Colombia, worked in Central America, worked in Mexico for a long time, and worked in this country. And worked in the Caribbean and became a big fan of reggae music.
Absolutely. I love Bob Marley and, all of these characters that sing reggae music. It just reminds me of the Caribbean when I hear it. It just brings back memories.
You weren't smoking a lot of ganja back then, were you?
No.
You sure?
Positive.
Okay. All right, we'll go with that. So, I think it's a solution worth considering. If you have context, Michael, have Raul say, okay, if I'm the bad guy here, I'm 94 years old, I'm on my last legs, life isn't that great, give me a cot, give me a warm room, and we'll make a deal. Lift the embargo and send over 1 million barrels of oil, and I'll surrender. It won't cost you a firefight or anything else. I'll just give myself up for a good deal.
Yeah, but see, the United States really does not want Raul Castro.
What do they want?
It would not be worth it to him to bring him to the United States and then try him, because you're talking about, probably $1 million trial. And then here's the thing is that he's no longer the leader. It's Miguel Diaz-Canel. So going after Raul Castro is not going to solve anything. Trump may be using that as a play to, get the...
Well, he's trying to make expatriates in Florida happy.
Exactly. And here's the thing is that, there's various domestic groups are already demanding an end to the blockade because of skyrocketing infant mortality. So Donald Trump and his administration, like they did the first day when they attacked Iran and killed 150, young schoolgirls. Now they're killing babies in Cuba, and I'm not a fan of the communist regime in Cuba, but Trump is depriving ordinary citizens of basic human needs, and as far as I'm concerned, it's an unethical form of leverage. He accuses Fidel Castro of shooting down 2 civilian aircraft 30 years ago. But, here's Donald Trump destroying, all these boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific. He's killed approximately 130 fishermen. He has presented not 1 gram of cocaine to show that they were carrying drugs. So you cannot operate as a leader of a country with sheer hypocrisy, accusing others of what you are doing, which is far worse.
All right, so Michael, what's the point here? I mean, is this just machismo? Is this he's doing favor for the Marco Rubios and his family and the expatriates? What's the point here? What's the point? I mean, he sends aircraft carriers from Venezuela back to Iran, back and forth across the ocean like they're toys on a game of Risk. These are sailors that have families that are now at sea for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a multitude of factors. Number one, he thinks that he can go into Cuba and
do what I want. He said multiple times, "I'll do what I want with it."
Yeah, exactly. But he doesn't understand Cuba is very different than Venezuela. The other thing too is he has been humiliated, and by virtue, he's humiliated the United States with this useless attack on Iran. The Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the fuel passes through, 30% of the world's fertilizer also passes through there. And, we're seeing, increasing prices on the pumps here and in other countries. Now, he wants to have like some success story because, Iran has humiliated him. And then recently you saw where he went to meet with Xi Jinping in China, and he was humiliated there. He bent the knee. He was telling Xi Jinping, he started off by saying, "Oh, I think you're a great leader. Some people don't agree with me, but, I still believe you're a great leader." And Xi Jinping, just ignored all protocol, didn't even meet him at the airport. And then, told him that the United States was in decline as a country. But then Trump, lying as he always does, tried to turn it around and say, "Oh, he wasn't referring to me. He was referring to Joe Biden," which is not true. Yeah. And then warned him about
be careful around Taiwan.
Be careful with Taiwan. And then Trump immediately suspended an arms deal with Taiwan. So, he wants to play the tough machismo guy with these small countries, but when it comes to Russia, to China, he's a coward.
It's difficult to play machismo when you have really small fingers. Can we talk about Venezuela when we come back?
Sure.
All right, 31 minutes after 3. Our guest is Michael S. Vigil, author, former head of undercover operations for the DEA for over 30 years.
Voice of Santa Fe on KTRC, Santa Fe's news talk leader.
I have no stake in it at all in Santa Fe Magazine or their big festival coming up at St. John's on the 12th, 13th, and 14th. But it might be worth your while to do a little investigation. They're going to have sessions. I mean, just look at one session here. Hampton Size will be talking with Dan Flores. You'll have Godfrey Reggio, the man who made Coy and Ascasi. You'll have the incredible sculptor Virgil Ortiz from Cochiti. You'll have the famous mushroom expert Dr. Andrew Weil. It goes on and on. Paul Pacheco from Ozo Motley. Meow Wolf Founders. Goes on and on and on. You can buy a day pass. Or you can buy a festival pass. It's going to be an incredible event. First of its kind here in Santa Fe. Once again, June 12th, 13th, and 14th up at the beautiful, peaceful St. John's College up on the hill. Mike Vigil is our guest. Mike, former undercover operations director for the DEA. And now retired and writing novels based on his own exploits, mostly in Mexico and Colombia. Anyway, so Miguelito, Venezuela. We went in and it was a successful raid. They said none of our soldiers got injured or anything like that. We can't trust these clowns anymore. But hopefully none of our soldiers got something like 80. I forget exactly. 80 Venezuelans died in this, and we kind of went in and came out and said, "Well, nobody died, nobody got hurt," and we bagged Maduro and his wife, who are still in New York City waiting trial, right?
Yeah, that is correct. They're waiting trial in New York, but the fact of the matter is that they did kill a lot of innocent Venezuelan citizens when they went in on that raid. But like everything else that Donald Trump and his administration do, they don't understand strategy. They don't understand consequences, like with Iran and the fact that Iran would then move to close the Strait of Hormuz. Apparently they never thought about that. And now, for example, the situation in Venezuela has worsened.
Really?
Yes. And the removal of Maduro from the country did not dismantle the entrenched systems of his government. As a matter of fact, the United States allowed Delcy Rodriguez, who was Maduro's vice president since 2018, to become the interim president. He left Diosdado Cabello, who was the right-hand man of Maduro. They also left Vladimir Padrino Lopez, the Secretary of Defense, that eventually Delcy Rodriguez got rid of him. But instead, this action by Donald Trump has ushered in a period of severe economic volatility, stagnant political progress, and then, a deep uncertainty, within the population of Venezuela. So in essence, the figurehead has changed, but the structure remains the same. The ruling United Socialist Party of Venezuela, maintains absolute control over all facets of the state, including the military, Richard, the police, the courts, and regional governments. And mainstream democratic movements, including leaders like, you've heard of Maria Corina Machado, right?
Yeah, right.
The one that won the Nobel Peace Prize. And then Donald Trump became angry because he forcibly wanted them to, award him that Peace Prize.
He solved 8 wars.
What's that?
He ended 8 wars.
Yeah. So, Washington is currently negotiating strictly with Delcy Rodriguez. And by the way, I have to mention this before I forget, Richard, is that she was a subject of a DEA investigation for many years on drug trafficking. And if she, there's no doubt in my mind that she was involved with the so-called cartel of the Suns, which is really not a cartel. It doesn't have a structure. It's primarily independent politicians and
Okay.
military personnel that engage in drug trafficking. But right now, there's no timeline for free and fair elections. And I have to say that Donald Trump, again, being angry that he didn't get the Peace Prize, then leave Machado and Mundo Gonzalez, who won the elections, but they were stolen by Maduro, and he comes up with these stupid comments saying that Machado was not well liked in Venezuela. She's the most popular leader in Venezuela, but again attacking her because of jealousy.
Yeah, petty jealousy.
It got to the point, Richard, where she had to fly to Washington and give him the medal that she received. And it was just symbolic because she can't change, the decision by the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. But, Trump jumped on that, accepted the medal, because,
Of course.
He's an idiot.
Because he has small fingers. So
yeah, exactly.
Maduro is under arrest. He's in New York City. He's awaiting trial on charges of drug trafficking, drug smuggling, being a drug dealer, being a drug kingpin. At the same time, didn't we, like a month before that, didn't Donald Trump pardon who was the guy in Central America that Trump pardoned?
Yeah, well, and
who was a convicted drug dealer, right?
Yeah, it was Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras,
right,
that stood trial in New York. He was accused of importing 450 metric tons of cocaine into the United States. He was convicted in a jury trial and then sentenced to 45 years. His brother, Antonio, was convicted even before him in a court in Miami and given a life sentence. But Donald Trump, gives this illusion that he's combating drugs. But, the fact of the matter is that he's not. He's already pardoned, like Larry Hoover of the Gangster Disciples in Chicago. And then in the counter drug strategy of the United States that recently came out, it said in there that they were going to go after traffickers of drugs that use the internet, but he pardoned Russ Albright,
right,
that was using the Silk Road, the internet to traffic drugs. So it's insanity. But again, here's a really a horrible situation for Venezuela, that it still suffers from, the highest inflation rate in the world, which is now roughly hitting about 600%. Can you imagine?
Jesus.
This guy goes in like a wrecking ball and then leaving chaos, children dying of starvation. He's not punishing the leaders of this country. He's punishing innocent people, but he doesn't care. And you'll recall early on in his administration, they had 70 tons of food articles in a warehouse that he could have given to poor people here in this country or poor countries in Africa. And his administration preferred to let it rot.
It is a terrible situation. Nothing seems to me, Michael, we got a few minutes left here. Nothing seems clearer than being the definition of corruption and illegal, this almost $2 billion slush fund from the DOJ. He said, well, I'll drop the charges or I'll drop the lawsuit against the DOJ for all the money on the planet for about $2 billion, just slightly less than $2 billion, that could be distributed as favors to my allies.
Yeah, what happened is that the IRS apparently leaked some of his income tax returns, and then Donald Trump immediately filed a $10 billion lawsuit against IRS, which was extraordinarily frivolous. And a federal judge was getting ready to throw out the case. And then Trump came out and said, "Okay, well, let's reach an agreement." And he said, "Okay, well, if you give me, or if you give, the people that were victims of Joe Biden's weaponized DOJ, which is an absolute lie. The DOJ was not weaponized under Biden. It's been weaponized under Trump, but so they want to give him, or he's soliciting $1.8 billion, which is going to go to people like the January 6th insurrectionists, like the white nationalist supremacist groups like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and others. And I'm sure Michael Flynn, Rudy Giuliani, and a lot of others are going to go after that money.
Roger Stone.
And you put it very appropriately, Richard, that this is the most blatant corruption I have ever seen, and a lot of people don't have any problem. I saw Todd Blanche testifying before a Senate subcommittee, and they were asking him questions. Are you going to give part of that money to people that attack police officers? And he was just, basically, trying to deflect the questions. But that's who it's going to go. It's going to go to, and then the fund. Get this. The fund is going to be run by a 5-member commission appointed by Todd Blanche, but these members can be removed at will by Donald Trump. So it's going to be Donald Trump that is going to, basically,
with no requirements of who gets the money or how much.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right.
So now you have 2 of the Capitol police officers that were attacked that are, trying to block this. You have a lot of the Democrats that are trying to block it. Even some of the Republicans, Richard, are trying to block it because they know this is going to be a massive issue, during the midterms.
So I should let you go because I know your favorite person on television, Scott Jennings, has just popped up on CNN.
Oh my! Listen, Richard, I got to make one point.
I know how badly you'd love to punch this guy.
I used to watch CNN a lot, and then they put Scott Jennings in there. I have not watched it since. This guy is just a MAGA Trumper, that just lies, and he's a protector of Donald Trump. But I would like to, make a.
You got 1 minute. You can use it for a comment, or you can use it for the 100 Club.
Okay, I want to, highlight the 100 Club. It's a bunch of people that, have, the interest of, police officers and firefighters who have been killed in the line of duty, helping their families out. So, I would really request that whoever's listening to this program, that they contribute to the 100 Club of New Mexico. They can go on the website, and I would also like to highlight New Mexico State University, which is a great institution. And if you're interested in law enforcement, they have a great criminal justice program. They have Dennis Gieber as the head of that department. They have Maria Dimitrijevic and so many others that are great, great professors.
Time is up.
Okay.
We'll let you go, and you can go back and watch Scott Jennings just to cheer you up.
Oh, no.
I know you will. I know you will. He's on with Jake Tapper right now on CNN.
Hey, I'm taking high blood pressure medicine. I don't need to watch God settings.
Thank you, Miguel.
All right. Thanks, Richard.
8 minutes until 4.